Welcome to our Equidox Advanced Topics training session. My name is Sean Keegan, and I'm joined today by Pat Needles and Soli Aga from Equidox. And today we're going to be presenting on the advanced features and capabilities of the Equidox application. A few housekeeping items before we get started. So please mute your line. We know that there's a number of activities that may be happening in your office, so we ask that you mute your line so those conversations do remain private and everyone can participate in this online session. We are recording this session. We will be posting that recording to the CCC Accessibility Center website in the next few days after we get it captioned. So that will be made available back to all the participants. Please ask questions. We will be monitoring the chat as we go through the presentation today. So if you are uncomfortable with asking any questions out loud, that's totally fine. But please feel free to use the chat otherwise. We don't have a problem, and we'll be more than happy to pause throughout the presentation today to take any questions. So please ask them, because I know there's some questions out there, as people have already emailed me a few. You are welcome to attend multiple sessions. So on Tuesday, we had the Introductory Topics training session for Equidox. Today are the Advanced Topics for Equidox. We will be hosting additional sessions as we move forward through the rest of the year, so you are always welcome to attend multiple sessions. And I'd also like to point out that there are answers available in the help videos in Equidox. So on the left side of the interface, there's a little question mark. And if you click on that question mark in the Equidox application, that will take you to a number of short form videos that identify different how-to activities in the Equidox application. As I mentioned before, the recording will be available on the Accessibility Center website. We will post that in the next few days, so please stay tuned for that. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Pat Needles and Soli Aga to go ahead and begin our presentation on the advanced topics of the Equidox platform. Pat, Soli, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sean, so much for the introduction, and welcome aboard, everybody. Glad to have you here for the advanced training session today. I will monitor the chat room, so if you have any questions, feel free to dump them in there, and we'll get those answers for you right away. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Soli so we use our time wisely here. And Soli, it's all yours.
Thanks, Pat. Quick check for sound. How do I sound?
Sound great.
Great. I'll do a screen share. Hopefully that goes just as well. There we go. Can you see my screen?
It's coming through here in a moment.
There it is.
Perfect.
There we go. Looks great.
Okay. Super. So welcome to Equidox, or more precisely, welcome back. This is the intermediate and advanced session. So we're going to be training you on things we learned in the beginner session. We'll do a quick review, and we'll be using a lot of those skills throughout this intermediate session. So as Pat said, feel free to ask questions related to either the beginner or advanced topics. Absolutely not a problem. So without further ado, welcome back to Equidox. I'm just gonna roll through some of the things we saw in our last session. So the login. This is a login where your admin would create a user for you. Once you've logged in with that admin granted user, you are presented with a document library. These documents are brought into the system via an import document or file upload. You can drag and drop one or more files here, or of course, click and use the file system dialog. Notifications for recent changes in the system. Settings, so like we mentioned last time, use of labels, groups and accounts are more the concern of the admin. And of course, search appliance, which we discussed as being something a bit more advanced. And if you need some information, feel free to reach out. help. So to Sean's point earlier, this is where you'll find the videos and a user guide, and of course the log off button. If I go back to the document view, so this is a list of docs. I'm going to use the filter to shortlist my California Community College document list. So I have a nice short list here. I'm going to go ahead and open the doc we worked on last time. So if you recall, this is a 12-page document. If you also recall, we always deal with documents at the page level. That's basically because that's how Adobe presents them, and that's how we will deal with them. Every document has properties, including a title. A title is different from the file name, as you can see, and then other metadata that we can suss out from the app itself. A default language, normally English, which we can override at the zone level later. For those of you that don't remember what zones are, we'll take a look in just a sec. Also, you have other tabs up here that are basically at the document level, including metadata, which we would see in the metadata tag of both the doc and the HTML. The images tab, which we've discussed as being a very good place to start your remediation. The history tab to show what changes have taken place to the doc over time. Permissions, of course, if ever this doc was shared, you could see who else is shared on it. And output, this is where we end our day with an output to either HTML, PDF, or EPUB. So just a reminder, one run through the remediation process, and we have access to all three exports. So nothing fancy has to be done once you've properly converted the document. Great, so I'm just gonna go ahead and click in. So I'm just gonna go over very quickly some of the basics. So let's pick a page that's a little clearer, like this. So if you recall, we have zones. Zones have reading orders. Reading orders are visible in the top right-hand corner. This will instruct a screen reader or other machine to consume the information in the order we prescribe. If we didn't do this, there's a chance that the document would be left from left to right. Meaning it would read the first line of this paragraph and of course the first line of the next paragraph in the second column. It's not something that we want. So we manage reading order. Reading order for zones can be managed manually via the order input right here. So we can put any order number we wish, or of course we could use the automatic reading order reset. So on this page, obviously a 2-column reading order, and we would set the zone reading to top left down to bottom left column, and then top right down to bottom right column. So 2-column reading order. There's an image here. This image was ignored. It was ignored because it adds no value to the document, particularly in terms of data, just a bunch of columns, not really adding value. That can be observed here in the images tab from the document detail view. So not only can we hide zones and images here, but also within the doc itself. So since the zones are hidden, there's a pull down up here with all the zones that are available, including my hidden one that's right there, image. So image is one type of zone type. We know from our last training that there are multiple types of zone types: text, heading, table, link, list. Just to give you an example. So on this page, I have one heading zone, I have 2 text zones, and I have 1 list zone. So we can see that the list is demarked with a different color. That helps a little bit. If you recall, switching to an OCR source would make the zone blue. And there are other indicators of zone differentiation. Once you've set up your zones, basically you can request a preview from the system. Let's just get that over here. Whoopsie, my apologies, 1 sec. Thanks, buddy. There you go. Okay. and you. So what we see is that institutional impact has a qualifier of heading. I could prove that to you in the source code. So we see that there's an H3 here, but we don't need to look at that. We can see it pretty clearly right on the screen. We see a paragraph text, and we see some list data. Just to remind you, working with list objects requires us to create list containers and list items. But thankfully, we are able to automate that process by simply creating a list zone on top of a list, lining up the green bar with the list delimiter, and just requesting an auto detect. And that will automatically create my list item zones. Of course, with the lists, I can select that it be unordered, aka the bullet, or I could go with ordered and select whether it be lowercase or uppercase letters, Roman numerals, numbers, etc. So with all that said and done, it gives us a preview. With that preview, we can have confidence if the preview looks good. Well, right away that the HTML will look good because it's right here in front of us, but also that the EPUB and the PDF will inherit the same structural integrity that we've provided to the stock. So namely headers, reading order, lists, tables, etc. So that was a review of a header zone, a text zone, and a list zone. Of course, we have more zones than that. We have image zones. So this is an image. Images are not changeable in terms of type, and that's because we need to handle them, meaning they should at the very least be invisible. And if we leave them visible, to include an alt tag description. So in this case, 2 students studying. And if I click on the preview, that's what I see. And of course, the alt tag would be available in the source code. So alt 2 students studying. And if you recall, that would also propagate to the PDF in the image asset in the PDF. So we do it once here. We get to benefit from the HTML, the PDF, and EPUB. There are images, but there are also graphics. So if I go to the last page, for example, did I do it already? No, I did not. So if I take this zone and move it over here and make it a certain size and then select type graphic and then enter, just like I would for an image, a description. So CCC Text Center. That's great. And if I issue a preview, I should see nothing more than one little graphic on the page. So that allows me to create images where perhaps images did not exist. It would also help me in another way that we'll see later in this tutorial, where sometimes images are broken up and we want to clean them up and do something a bit more logical. And I'll explain that in just a second. So with all that said, that was a basic review of some types. Maybe I'll show you also table types, since we did cover it. So this is a table. To create a table type, you basically select the zone on top of the table and select type table right there. Once that's done, we're able to invoke the table editor. With a simple click, the table editor opens, and that allows me to set up these guides, and these guides will translate into tabular structure for data in both the HTML and the PDF. So if I do a preview of this, I'll see right away that I have a structured table. If ever there were too many columns, I could merge right and do a preview, and we'll see right away that I have a 2-column table, which doesn't really work for me. I can see clearly it's 3. So I'll split a row. Whoops. I'll split a column, I mean. So that gives me a new guide here. I can place it where I feel it's best representing the structure. Request a preview. Boom, all set. I'll save my table, exit back to the page, make my other required remediations. For example, set this header to 3, confirm the granularity of my paragraph here, and of course, the table. So speaking of granularity, I forgot to remind you of one of our favorite little tools. It is a point. Yes.
But I'm sorry to jump in. There were a couple of questions before you move on to that.
Yes.
That last page you were on. Where are zones 3 and 5 in that on that page?
Great question. It's not necessary that all the zones be accounted for, i.e. sequential. What is important is that they are in order. So for this page here, I've got zone 1, 2, 3, 4. It wouldn't matter if this was 1, 100, 1,000, and 100,000, as long as the numeric order matches what I expect. If ever there's a zone out of order, let's say, like this one, or let's say it has a number that is not really in sequence with the rest of my zones, I always have the choice of reordering, and of course it'll just simply renumber all my zones to be more representative of the existing flow. So if I delete this, 2 remains the first zone. That doesn't affect my reading order, as we'll see in this preview. So that's great. If I wanted this to go back to 1 so that my numbers match or make more sense in terms of the sequence, I could just reorder them, and of course it would bring it back to 1. Did that answer your question, or can I further explore that?
I think that was good. Then the next question was, how do you request auto detect, and does it automatically tag the headers in a table?
Great question. Absolutely not. If a document is tagged, and if you recall, when we viewed our export, this guy right here, with this example, we looked at the tag tree and we had tags. Now, some documents may have tags already, and if they do, you'll know that from the document lists. So let's go take a look at that very quickly. So right here, I see that I have a tagged document. Just because a document is tagged doesn't mean it's tagged well. What I mean by that is it could just have one tag at the beginning and one tag at the end that says page, and that would be enough for this document to be tagged. Will it pass WCAG? No. Or any 508 requirement or any PDF validation? No. But it'll still show up as tagged. So moreover, a document may have many, many, many tags, and those tags may be fantastically helpful or they may be erroneous. When they're helpful, if headers are qualified, if tables are qualified, if lists are qualified, Equidox will in fact read those and do its best to import them as they are, which will reduce your time to remediate. Unfortunately, just because a doc is tagged doesn't mean it always is tagged well. More often than not, what I've seen is that even with the best tagging, often the reading order isn't respected. So all the elements are very well tagged, my headers, my tables, etc. But unfortunately, the reading order is a mess, and all that's required is for me to go in and just fix the reading order. But with that said, it's not always true, and it's not always possible. So no, Equidox doesn't automatically detect your headers, but what it can do is if the document is well structured, and what that means is fonts and other types of ASCII qualifiers are being respected across the doc, I can use something called use as template. So if I define this as an H3, I can request that, oops, my shortcut's not cutting. Okay, so if this is an H3, I can save, and then Equidox will go and try to find all headers that might match this qualifying ASCII data. This doesn't always work because half the time, or even probably more than half the time, there's small variations from page to page that don't allow us to use that template with any confidence. But by all means, give it a shot. If it works, and that's why it's there. And if it doesn't, it's because we're not able to uniquely identify these headers. So unfortunately, that's left up to us. On the other side of the coin, if you recall, The auto detection is done at the beginning of the process, meaning when we import, the first step is to upload the file to the internet, which is obvious. Less obvious is the second step of auto detection. So if I say I import this, it will send this file to the data store, but nothing's yet happened to this file till I click import. Now the import process can take a long time depending on the document, depending on the number of tables, images, whether it contains OCR assets, etc. So you click import. So one level of auto detection is taking place here. And what's happening is essentially Equidox is going in and trying to determine what assets are text, what assets are images, what assets are tables. What can we determine for you before you start the remediation right away? So to that note, for this document, for example, this guy here. All right. So if I look at images, it already tells me I have like one detectable image, which means these other guys are not images. They could be set up in the background. They could be set up as text. They could be set up as vectors, but they're not JPEGs. So there's something else. So that's part of the auto detection. So it'll go in and try to find as much as it can on my behalf so that I don't have to determine all those. But with that said, Equidox, in spite of its awesomeness, and it is awesome, doesn't always succeed at determining everything it can. So in this case, these lines are spaced in just enough distance from each other for the system to not really see them as a paragraph, which means if I request a preview, what we see here is a line break exactly where you would expect it, right at the end of each of these zones. So this doesn't help me very much because the screen reader would pause, take a breath, and read this H as a capital or the beginning of a sentence and really cause the person using the document at least some deal of grief, listening to this mispronounced document for God knows how many pages it is. So what we can do is use the sensitivity slider to further coax Equidox into seeing a paragraph structure that actually makes sense. So now if I request a preview, we'll see right away that this makes a ton more sense in terms of readability. And of course, the screen reader won't stop at DOJ and then start again at the word and. It'll read right through the sentence. I'll pause there. Did that answer the question of auto detection and what Equidox can provide?
I think one of the issues solely, or a couple of them, were not. And the questions that were being asked were two different things that you were talking about. The first was the auto detect, was when you were talking about lists and how you just create a list zone, then click auto detect. But
Lovely.
you didn't show where the auto detect was located.
I understand completely. So let's go back to this list. And then what I'm going to do is select this zone. I'm going to show you a little trick because we're in the advanced class. Not only do I have sensitivity available to me at the page level, so to affect the whole page, but I can also affect just the contents under a zone. So in this case, I want to get rid of all of those list items because I'm going to auto detect again. So I'm going to set it to 0. And then I'm going to change this to type list. So once that's done, that selection, the properties for the zone changes. So right down here under the list selector is the list properties tab. And this is where I'm able to select an ordered list or an unordered list. And then of course request an auto detect. So I'll click there once. So on the mid left of the screen. And then of course it will detect my list items for me automatically. And then if I do a preview, I want to show you something quickly. So there's my list. So just to show you, I could have gone ordered And I could have said that we are doing numeric listing and I don't need to detect because I already have my zones in there, although I could if I wanted to. I'll click on the preview and we'll see that now it's a numeric list. So that allows us some flexibility in terms of our list management. Of course, in this case, it's unordered, so I won't have to worry about that for today. Does that answer the question? Can I explore it further?
Thank you. Yes. And the second question was about headers. Let's see here. Yeah. So the second question was about headers and had to do with when you were talking about tables. You just created a table zone, but didn't appear to identify the headers. So I wanted to know how to properly indicate the header cells.
Sure thing. All right. A lot of this will become more clear as you use the application. So don't feel that there's too many details. All of our properties for each of the zones are contained within that zone, and you can explore each zone type at your own leisure. So for table, it was a good question. Basically, I have my column header right here and my row header. So I can set the column header and row header to the first row and first column. Of course, I can also set it to 0 to exclude a row header, let's just say. And then when I click preview, what we'll see is that these are bold. So if I re-engage the row header to include both a column and row header and click preview, we'll see that these will also turn bold. And what bold really means is if we look in the source, it's really the difference between just having a table row or a table header, so a TH. And then you can see that we have scope. So scope, for those who care or know, will allow us to either do a generic scope like column and row, or we can implement IDs. So each cell will have a unique identifier. So the table, in fact, won't look any different with that change, except in the source code. So if I show you that, we went from having a table header with a scope of column to an actual unique identifier. And that enables us to target any cell we wish. So basically, to answer the question, you have both your column and row headers, and then your scope desire. And then, of course, there's a sensitivity slider for tables if you wanted to try to detect cells and stuff. Also, you can manually insert a certain number of columns and rows, which comes in handy for obviously larger tables. Is that clear? Any other questions on tables? I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't see anything else that has come up. So thank you for the response, and you can move forward, please.
Great. So what we're going to try to do for the rest of this session is look at a few more complex pages. One of them exists in this document right here, and we're going to look at it right now. So with everything we've learned for this page that there's definitely a header in the way of the word introduction. I can see with my eyes that I have essentially two paragraphs, one right here, and then one here that continues into the second column. And then I see that I have a third asset. It's a block quote. So I'm going to handle all of these. And this is a tricky page. So we're in the advanced session. Hold on to your boots. First things first, I'm going to play around with the sensitivity slider to see if I can get sensitivity to behave the way I want. And what we see is that sensitivity isn't doing me too many favors. I'm trying to get Equidox to understand the context of these paragraphs, but they're not standard, and I don't blame it for being a little bit confused. So I'm going to save time by not working with the automation, and I'm going to go manual or hand-drawn. So we can start with introduction. I can right away just click on it and using my shortcuts qualify it as an H2. So that zone's done. I can walk away. Let's do a preview right now to show you what we got. As expected. I may want to include this image, so let's just go ahead and turn that into a graphic. And then it's going to be the California Community College Accessibility Center. And I can save that and do a preview. Lo and behold, my order is off. I have a choice. I can reorder it right away. That's kind of fun. And it'll fix it for me, so I get my my fix that I'm working and getting things accomplished. Or of course, I can wait till the end of the page and just reorder it once. That's up to you. This page is 2-column, so obviously I would choose a 2-column sort order. But none of that matters yet because we don't have any zones. So let's get some zones on the page. I'm just going to draw them manually around each of these assets. So there's my first one. Here's my second one. I'm going to use my keyboard just to nudge that around. Here's my third one. And you see that I'm drawing them in the order I want them read. That'll just save me time later with reordering, since I'm not expecting or planning to reorder this page automatically because we're doing something a little bit special. So basically now I've gone ahead and selected all my paragraph text. I'm just going to go ahead and do a preview. That's pretty much what I expect. I can see here that this paragraph and this paragraph aren't connected, although they should be. And the reason for it is that I've drawn 2 zones because I can't really draw an L-shaped zone. So I'll draw 2. And then what I'll do is request a merge. So a merge is very simply the ability to merge the zone that's post to the zone that's pre. So it just links these 2 numbers together, and that's it, that's all. This also works from page to page, so long as my last zone and my first zone are the ones that I'm linking. So with that merge feature for this zone, requesting that it merge to this paragraph, what we're going to see is a change right here, where the all members and serve will now be part of the same paragraph. If I click the preview button properly. There we go. So now I see 2 zones, but 1 paragraph. And that's important because what's the truth there is that my p tag, there's only 1 p tag now for those 2 and not 2 p tags. So 2 p tags would still work. No one would be too disappointed, but truth be told, we're in the business of doing things right. So let's go ahead and merge those together while we're in here, right? We're merging. I'm sorry, we're converting. So let's convert. 1 sec. Sorry. Oh, accidentally hit refresh. Give me 1 second. So to the point that I just always save, but also this is how fast this is. And this is how fast you should feel you're able to do it. It really just takes about 30 seconds per page, and then we're pretty much done. So I just wanted to point out the merge, and then I'm going to point out that text in the middle in 1 second. Okay, there we go. I'm going to save just in case. Whoops, save, there we go. So I'll just merge this first one for us. So now I have text that reads in the order I'm expecting. All I have to do is capture this text in the middle. So it would be enough just to select it. It's going to be read 8th or last. So as you can see, irrelevant of its position on the page, we're deciding when it gets read, and that's really the hooks and the crooks of all of this effort that we're making, is a real, true control of the reading order and then the application of that truth. If I wanted to treat this as a block quote, I can. It's not necessary, as I said before, but if I did want to treat it as a block quote, I would just wrap it in another tag. And of course, that tag would be type block quote. So now, as you can see, this is kind of stuck to the side and doesn't have any distinguishing features outside of being italic, which it already is. But now with the block quote in place, you can see that I've actually got myself a literal block quote. And of course, that's going to be represented in the tags. So that's how this page would get handled. You can see that basically it's not as easy as some of the other pages we worked on. Sensitivity didn't work quite as well as it did on the other pages. but that's okay. It doesn't have to. We don't rely on sensitivity. We just ask it to do the best it can to get us through the page as quickly as possible. So for this page, definitely not useful. But of course, for a page like this, it's going to be super useful. In fact, you can finish the whole page in about 3 seconds. H3, preview, boom, done. The only thing missing would be, of course, a merge on this paragraph like we just learned, because the word have and the word universities go together. So I'll just merge that. And of course, I want to put an alt tag on this image. It's going to be students, just like that. And then I'll do another preview. This paragraph will shoot up. And then this now is tagged. I'm ready to get out of this page. Page is done. You click next and you move through the doc. So I just wanted to show you, that's the last time we'll work in this document, unless you have questions, of course, you can return to it. But I really just wanted to show you this page, because this page was a manually remediated page versus an auto remediated page. And it's very important to know that you always have the choice, and trying to work with what Equidox gives you isn't always the best idea, because sometimes it can be much faster just to go manual. So if I remind you, I mean, where was I? The best I could do was this. So instead of trying to like work with these like 18 zones, there's just too many. It's super ugly. I don't really feel like doing it. It's a mess. I'll just reload this page. Do it like that, do it like this. One sec, apologies. So I'll just reload this page from cache, from save, I mean. There we go. So you see here, I've only got 7, 8 zones plus the block quote 9. It's way easier to work with. It's as simple as dragging and dropping. So that's this page. Any questions at this point? If not, we're going to move on to even more complicated stuff.
I do not see any questions in the chat box, so we might as well just keep chugging along.
I'm going to chug along.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so this is another example provided for this training. This is a slightly longer document, 20 pages. It's got lots of weird reading order stuff going on. I got 3 column, I got 2.5 column, I got a 2 column. So obviously our work is cut out for us. As always, when you enter a doc, what's the first thing we do? We're just gonna go take a look at our images. How many of them look like they're a waste of my time or our time? How many of them look amazing? So hold on, this is a doc I was already working in. So just to keep me honest, let's just go ahead and bring it back in from the scratch. There we go. Thanks, buddy. My screen is all slow from the screen sharing. I apologize. All right. So once again, I uploaded. Now I'm importing. So what's happening now is we're looking for images, we're looking for tables, we're looking for lists, we're looking for tags. We could be looking for nothing. It could just be a terrible doc with all images and there's nothing to find but images. So these are all the things that we deal with. As remediation specialists, we rarely have control of the document in terms of publication. We usually just get what we've been given, what we've been dealt, and we got to play the game with the cards we've been dealt. So even though you get a bad hand sometimes, meaning the doc was designed by someone who's maybe not all there, we still have the obligation of remediating that doc and making sure it's accessible. So this is obviously not one of those cases. This document is beautiful, just a bit complicated. So once again, I can look at images. So what I can see is that all these images don't have descriptions, which is what I expect. I can also kind of tell that most of these are probably fluff, marketing, not really useful. I don't think I'm going to remediate that there's a bunch of doctors smiling at me. I don't think it's important to the doc itself. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide all of these. And I'm going to save. And what you might notice is that there is one image here I probably want to keep, and it's of this gentleman. I forget his name. It starts with an E. So I can make this zone visible here because I will want to put his name in, or I could do it in the document at a later point. It's up to me. but I'll just do it here since I'm already aware of where we're heading. If you're not, err on the side of safety, don't hide it, deal with it when you get there. So page 1. Actually, wait, I wanted to show you something before we do that. I'm going to go back here and make all of these visible again, because there's a very interesting problem in this doc that you might encounter. And here it is. So what is this, right? Oh my God, what did Equidox do? There's a million zones. I don't know what it's thinking. I go to sensitivity, I slide it around, nothing's happening. I'm not getting any response from this. I click on this, it's an image. I can't do anything to it. I'm super frustrated. It looks like hell. If I do a preview, it's gonna show me all these images. Oh my God, I don't know. I don't wanna deal with this. So what am I gonna do? I can hide the images here, one by one. Super slow and boring, so I won't. I'll come back here, and of course I'll hide them all. Now, in spite of hiding them all, it doesn't mean I don't want to, hold on, let me get my butt here. It doesn't mean I want to exclude them, okay? So maybe I want to still use this title image, no problem. I'm just gonna draw a zone over the images like this. Whoops, I went off my screen. Just like that. I'm going to call this type graphic as we saw earlier. And I'm going to say like cover graphic. And then I'm going to preview. And what we're going to see is a much more logical setup. So that makes sense to me. You can see that the order is wrong. It can be fixed using the screen ordering tool. Here's another tip. It's advanced. We can see that vision for success is okay. It's kind of funny. You see how it read the 4 after? Do you know why that is? I can tell you. And it's a very annoying part of remediation in the PDF world, but it's a reality. So the way PDFs are structured, the cursor is going to read left to right, right from the top of the screen to the bottom, 1 pixel at a time. So guess what word it encountered after vision? It encountered success because of that reading on the line. So it won't see the word for quite a while. So there's a way to fix that. It's basically to break it up into 3 zones and of course merge it. So merge each zone to the last. I'm just gonna do a reorder here really quickly. There we go. So that'll get merged. Save. Great. And I think I have to just refresh because of this little thing here. 1 sec. Then merge. The order's a little off because Equidox does exactly the same thing in terms of ordering. So if I wanted auto order to work, I would make these all the same height. But if I don't want to bother with that, I'm just going to reorder them manually because it's easier than trying to resize all those zones. And this is pretty fast, so I'll just do it. That's 10. And then, of course, if we do a preview, vision for success. So that makes total sense. And it's not because Equidox has a weakness or anything. And it's not even the fault, really, of the designer. This is really part of how PDFs are structured, and there's very little in the way of working around it except for your awesome contributions. So let's look at this guy down here. We got a little group of 3 zones. It breaks up into 3 lines. I don't really need 3 zones. This is really all part of 1 long sentence. It's just that the designer put it on 3 lines because it looks awesome. So let's not argue with the designer. Let's just fix the zone manipulation. So now I've got a page that's pretty awesome. This is a good remediation. I could of course include the logo, and I actually will show you a little trick for including things like this. Is I'll create a zone, and then I will click on OCR and request a convert to text, and it'll do its best to try to pick up what text is here, and it did a pretty good job. So I'll just copy that, change this to graphic, and paste it in the alt tag. So this is just another way you can use OCR. It's, again, this is the advanced course. So I'm showing you a little bit of the workarounds that we can use when encountering things like infographics, images with text, images with data. So we're not going to be able to use a regular approach. We're going to have to get creative and use some of the other tools in Equidox to the end that we're looking for. So in this case, I just copied that because I didn't want to type all of those words. Simple as that. I can see that my zone's not ordered properly. So again, I'll just do it manually because it's easier. And we do a preview, bada bing, bada boom. That's what we like. So I'll save. Page 2. So there's the image that I kept. I know this gentleman's name is something with an E. So I'm going to go to the next page. And much like I just did with OCR, I'm going to go down to the zone source and select custom. Here I'm able to alter the text if I like, which I don't like because it's perfect the way it is. And I'm going to take Eloy Oritz Oakley. That's a great name. And then I'm just going to put his name in the alt tag. And I'm done. No typing. Just copy paste, move along. So here I see that there's a little break in this. I could use the sensitivity slider to fix it. Tick, 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 tick. There. That's fine. Totally possible. Alternatively, I could just delete this and resize the zone. Really up to you. But it's really up to the page. So pick a sensitivity that's best for the page. And then if there's a zone or two that don't work, like this guy, just delete, drag, and drop. Very easy. Then you do a preview. And we got everything we want, and we're done. Or are we? Maybe we'll get the signature. And then I'll call it a graphic. And then I'll call it sig of Mr. Oakley. Save. Preview. And now I've actually got his signature, except the order is wrong. So I'll just go page and reorder. Beautiful. And now it'll show up where it's supposed to. Great. All done. Next page. So what did I want to show you? Page 4. All right. This is a doozy. Look at this bad boy. Stuff everywhere. If I do a preview right off the bat, the text is captured, but again, it's not great. I've got some problems with the paragraph structure. Not really sure what all this is and if it looks right or if I like it. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to select sensitivity once again and pick a sensitivity I like. So that looks pretty good. I got some headers here. They're getting blocked in, so I'm just going to go pull those out manually. I'm going to leave all of these as just text items. But if I wanted to draw lists, because they're kind of bullets, but I don't think it's necessary in this case to actually, whoops, my bad, sorry. 1 second here. I clicked on the erroneous button. Okay. So zone. Now I'm going to draw a zone over this guy like this. And then I'm going to just resize it so that it kind of matches the shape of my list here. Does anyone know what I'm going to do next? I do. I'm going to select sensitivity. I'm going to get rid of all those zones that I don't need because I'm going to do list and auto detect. Bada bing, bada boom. So if I do a preview now, just take a look at this page and remember what we're looking at. It's kind of a mess. I don't think we love it. So let's do a preview now. It's going to look a lot better. My paragraphs are intact. I can see here, I want to pull out project leaders. I can see here also advisors, I'll pull that out. That's looking good. I'll pull out expert. And if I go to the bottom, I have a list for the one area that I created a list. So in the world of conversion, you're going to have choices to make about whether to convert or not convert. Whether you're going to make a list or just leave it as a paragraph, whether it should be a block quote or just leave it as is, whether this is a header or whether it's just a piece of text. So these are all choices you can make yourself in conjunction with your admin, in conjunction with your accessibility team and department. So there's no steadfast rules. There is a lot of common sense, and I know you guys have it, so feel free to use it. We're running short on time. So I'm going to jump right out of this doc and show you one more thing related to another fairly advanced concept. I'm going. There we go. And it was this guy. So this is a nice short doc. I'm going to show you first on this page. Once again, we're going to just adjust sensitivity till we like it. We're going to set our headers, whatever it is, H1, H2, H2, H2. I'm pretty much done, except I've got this infographic. So there's a few ways to do this. The one I like best would be to select the whole thing as an image, turn it into a graphic, and then start the description using my keyboard, so leadership, sponsorship. This may seem like a lot of work, but let me tell you that accessibility people have exactly zero data here. All they hear in their ears is image 1. That doesn't give them any value. So while it may seem a bit arduous, it's actually very nice of you to do, and it's very much appreciated by those reading this document. So I say I can type, that is true, but I have another choice. I can also kind of like select certain areas and go to OCR and request convert to text. And if I'm super lucky, I should get executive decisions. So in this case, like, I'm a good typer. I don't think I'll have problems typing these, but in other cases, I might want to go to the OCR just to pull out those assets and then apply them to something that makes more sense. So while it may be tedious, I promise you it's very much appreciated in the accessibility world, and your time is not for naught. I'm going to hit up this page because I promised to cover some tables. So I got a page here with 3 tables. I have a choice. Once again, creativity. I can make one big crazy table, or I could make 3 smaller tables. So what makes more sense to me is 3 smaller tables, mainly because that's the way the publisher thought this would work, and I'm not writing this document, I'm simply converting it. So I'll do my best to stay true to the vision of the existing publisher. So here I see that I'm going to want to put this guide here. Here I see that I'll want to split the row. Here I see I'll want to split the row. I'm going to make a few adjustments for position, nothing too drastic. A little bit. And then one more split. And then I preview. Pretty awesome. So I'll save and I'll close. And then I can preview this page. And of course, we all know what we're going to see. Huh? Oh yeah, table's at the bottom. You know, I drew this zone last, so I got the last available increment. So I'll require a page reorder, which is not hard to do. Do a preview again, and then I see that. That's perfect. So this is why page reorder is very important. This is why reading order is very important. And as you could see before, it's very easy for a screen reader not to know what's going on. Much like the word for before success that we saw before, that word would have been read after those 2 other words, which makes the whole sentence basically jumbled and incomprehensible. So we're trying to add comprehension, and that's what we're doing, and we're doing a great job. Last page. So here you see 3 items. Is this a table? Maybe. Is it just a list? Maybe. Is it just a bunch of text? Maybe. That's up to you. Here I have an infographic. So once again, I'd say possibly like a triangular graph, and then I'd start entering information, possibly even about values. So I've done maps where I've entered population for each of, say, the states. So 1.2 million for this state, and then 1.4 million for that state. And I'll go through and literally just type these all out, because if we don't do it, no one will. And then these assets remain completely invisible. So that's how those are handled. 5 minutes left. I got to pause for questions.
Thank you, Soli. I don't see anything in the chat room, and we can obviously open it up for the next 5 minutes for Verbal questions or written questions, whatever you like, folks. I hope you have gotten some good value out of the more complex pages that Soli has converted in some of the areas, whether it's zones or tables or anything along those lines, lists.
Pat, I think we got a question about aligning text in the last table.
I just saw that. Thank you. Soli, did you get that?
Yeah, I hear that. We don't offer at the moment any interjection on the data assets. So we've been asked for lots of types of ways to get involved with the table data. That's not something we can do at the moment. We're looking at it. But for this case, the reason those are centered is because that row is being set to header. It's just a default setup. If it's something you wanted to change at any point in time, once you export your final product, you're more than welcome to insert style sheets. And you can bind the style sheets to the tag elements. I'm not going to reconvert this whole table just to save time. I'm just going to show you that this is centered. But if I go, I have to just get out of here like this. Hold on, sorry. It's my Zoom. What was I saying? Oh yeah, if I make this 0, there's my 0 row header. And then I preview, you'll see that this will no longer be centered. So the only reason those were centered is because they were qualified as headers. But in most cases, we're going to default to the left top corner. We are looking at getting some more functionality in here for everyone to play with, but we're not there yet, and it's a very complex interjection to create these types of modals and interject with the data. Yeah, so not yet, but soon, maybe.